You have the power to connect with your finances, looking on your financial goals, and tailored updates on your accounts. First Hawaiian Bank is putting the power of connection at your fingertips. First Hawaiian Bank. Equal housing lender, member FDIC.
One of America's top radio personalities, Jim Bohannon, brings his wit, wisdom, and natural charm to listeners on Guam. Voted one of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America, The Jim Bohannon Show brings listeners a unique blend of breaking news, interesting features, and informative reports on a spectrum of topics. The Jim Bohannon Show, Saturday through Monday from 6 to 9 p.m., and a Sunday morning bonus show from 6 to 9 a.m. Jim Bohannon on Guam's only news talk superstation, 93.3 The Point.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Science in the way of an investigation. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The U.S. Senate is still in session, at the moment debating a science and technology research bill. The leadership hoping to move in the hours ahead to a bill to create a commission to study the Capitol building riot.
Republican leader Mitch McConnell says a new panel will not uncover new facts.
And obviously, the role of the former president has already been litigated exhaustively.
At least 10 Republicans will need to join Democrats to advance the commission legislation that Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says is vital.
We must get at the truth and do everything in our power to restore Americans' faith in our elections.
Without agreement on a commission, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi could impanel a congressional committee to hold hearings.
Fox's Jared Halpern. President Biden will unveil his budget plan Friday, expected to come in around $6 trillion, a huge increase. The president, speaking in Ohio Thursday, said boosting the economy now is crucial.
You can't reboot a global economy like flipping on a light switch. There's going to be ups and downs in jobs and economic reports. There's going to be supply chain issues, price distortions on the way back to a stable and steady growth.
New unemployment claims fell last week for the fourth week in a row. 2 Tacoma, Washington police officers have been charged with second-degree murder in the death of a black man in police custody last year. A third officer is charged with manslaughter in the death of Manuel Ellis, who died after being restrained by police.
In their probable cause, they say none of the video evidence nor any of the witnesses say that they saw Manny Ellis resisting arrest in any way. The witness saying, it doesn't seem like he was fighting at all to me. He wasn't even defending himself. And also, the Attorney General's office questioning the very existence of a reason for a stop in the first place.
Reporter Brandy Cruz of Fox Q13 in Seattle says the officers will make their first court appearances Friday. America is listening to Fox News.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with a remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
2 bills will be introduced in Congress Friday about the pandemic. One would examine the country's response to it. The other would open the door for Americans to sue the Chinese government for the effects of the coronavirus. As we embark on the first holiday weekend of the summer, pandemic-weary Americans seem ready to travel.
Airports across the country, including here at LAX, are already seeing a surge, and a predicted 2.5 million Americans will take a flight somewhere for the holiday. That's a 577% increase on last year when we were pretty much all locked down. Now, it's also worth noting that perhaps because of ongoing mask mandates, perhaps because the ever cost-conscious airlines, for the most part, still haven't restored full food and drink service, so flying still isn't much fun, the number of Memorial Day flyers will still be down by 750,000 from 2019.
Fox's Jonathan Hunt, and if you're driving, AAA says Memorial Day weekend and gas prices will be the highest in 7 years. Vice President Kamala Harris will give the commencement address to the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland on Friday, becoming the first woman to do so. Last year's commencement was virtual. If you vote to cut police funding and then you're a crime victim, who are you going to call?
An Atlanta City Council member and Democrat candidate for mayor who voted to defund the police by $73 million needed to call the cops this week. Several young people stole his car in broad daylight while he spoke just feet away. Council member Antonio Brown tried to stop the juvenile behind the wheel.
The kid started to drag me in the car a half of a block.
He says he feared for his life, so he ultimately let go. Brown says he filed a report with the Atlanta Police Department, but does not plan to press charges. Cops say the youngest accused car thief is just 6 years old. Tom Graham, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Half a day, this is Honey. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumont. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. You know, Jose, it was inevitable, but it's happened again. It's inevitable, but it's happened again. It's the last day of the week.
What's going on?
Yeah, there's nothing we can do to stop it. We have to live with it, and we're going to have 3 whole days of misery ahead of us.
You just keep piling on the misery.
Yes, for sure. Well, but this is our last day at Tall Tales before next Tuesday, so let's make the best of it. Yeah, I'm going to start out with Zemi Ikotny. It's a great way to start a show. And I got to get out my blue pencil here immediately before I even read a single word. Here's the headline of today's Daily News editorial. Are you ready for this? Education can't falls short again. Now, let me tell you what it does not say. It does not say education can't fall short again. It says education can't falls short again. And if I were to write the subtitle, I'd say it's absolutely necessary that people who work for a newspaper understand the basic rules of English grammar.
Especially when they're talking about education.
Exactly, yeah. But now I can understand how it happened, because later on in the editorial, let's see. Well, I'm sure I'll come to it in just a second. Yeah, education can't falls short again. After more than a year of disrupted education in our public schools, our students, especially those in elementary and middle school, deserve and need to return to full-time, face-to-face instruction. Guam Department of Education Superintendent, who's actually the Superintendent of Education, not the Guam Department Superintendent, John Fernandez said, based on current pandemic safety guidelines, only half the island's public schools have enough room to accommodate students who want to return to face-to-face instruction next year. If the 3-foot social distancing requirement isn't eased, the school system is considering splitting students into 2 groups attending face-to-face classes on alternate days, Fernandez said. He said Guam DOE needs to make a decision about scheduling, that because it doesn't make sense for half of the schools to have daily instruction and the other half on split schedule. There needs to be a single policy applied to all schools. The plan, Fernandez said, is to push for increased vaccination of employees and students in hopes public health will ease social distancing requirements. Now, they took the words right out of my mouth. The next sentence, the editorial said, but that hope isn't a real plan. Hoping for something is no plan at all. The Center for Disease Control Prevention has required all schools to maintain past year protocols until the end of this school, and the agency is expected to release revised protocols in the next few weeks. There's no guarantee that the distancing requirements will be reduced. A split session simply won't cut it, especially for younger students. They need in-person instruction much more so than high school students. If the education agency needs flexibility, then do it at the high school level. Parents need their children to be taught in classrooms so they can return to their jobs. Many parents can't resume going to work if their children aren't at school during the day. Guam DOE has more than $300 million in federal funding to spend on pandemic-related needs. Ensuring public school students can return to face instruction would be a good use of the money. Once again, education can't fall short again. Not a bad editorial, but no blue star with a boner like this in your headline. Pacific Daily News. All right, let's see what the Post screwed up today. It says it takes a community and a vigilant mindset to stop thieves. That sounds like something Hillary Clinton would say, except that I don't think Hillary would really be much in favor of stopping thieves. Someone or some people recently ripped several sets of accordion shutters from the new structure in Barragata Heights that just had a ribbon-cutting preparation for it to begin housing foster children in a group setting. The home was not yet in use, so no child was in harm's way during the theft. Still, the theft took a great deal of effort since shutters normally get drilled into a concrete wall using heavy-duty screws and power tools. It was a brazen act of thievery for sure, one that required some premeditation. It's not the first time someone in Guam lost a set of typhoon shutters for an entire home's or building's windows to thieves. Shutters can cost thousands of dollars to install, more in a bigger structure, so the cost of the loss and replacement can really hurt the property owner's pockets, just like the theft of a motorcycle. And for validation of that idea, check with Steve Ignacio, Chief of Police. The other aspect of how brazen it is to steal someone's typhoon shutters is the fact that the island is pretty small. Surely someone would suspect if a person or group of people shows up peddling typhoon shutters in a neighborhood or a scrapyard. You know, your neighborhood typhoon shutters stand, lemonade and typhoon shutters. The fact that the theft of typhoon shutters is a recurring incident shows there's a market for it. It shows there are people who are willing to buy items whose origin should raise suspicion. The theft of typhoon shutters and the willingness of others to receive or buy these items do not make our community look good. The issue isn't just about shutters and how they were stolen. It also says a lot about a community that has failed to look out for each other. It's time we all do our part in speaking up when we see or hear about any type of merchandise being offered or exchanged outside of a setting in which they are normally sold. Yeah, I can remember my law school days, and there was a bar downtown, and not far from the University of New Mexico campus, and there was a bar there called Okies. You could never get away with calling a bar Okies anymore. It's racist. It's against folks. It's against people from Oklahoma.
That's what I thought that was. There's a whole song on that.
It's Oklahoma. It's not Okies. So anyhow, you could sit in Okies sometimes, especially on a Saturday night, and you'd see scruffy-looking people shuffling amongst the people in the bar with a half dozen watches on their arm. And they would approach various and sundry customers, not me because I look too honest, and they'd say, "Hey, my buddy just robbed a jewelry store. You want to buy a watch really cheap?" And I've seen this happen. I've seen a guy walk out of the bar with a bare arm. Yeah, you know, such a deal.
Second Amendment allows them.
Say again?
I said Second Amendment allows them.
Yeah.
To have bare arms.
Well,
but you know that's the thing you used to see in New York City a lot too. These pop-up stores, quote-unquote stores.
Yeah.
They'll never two of one thing.
Well, I'm hoping that what I saw back in the 70s at Okies Bar and Grill in Albuquerque was just a sign of the times. All right. Going on with the editorial here. It's time we all did our part in speaking up when we see or hear about any type of merchandise being offered, exchanged outside of a setting in which they are normally sold. It's time we all do our part in speaking up when we see or hear about any merchandise being offered or exchanged outside of a setting in which it is normally being sold, right? They use they. Yeah. You have a day no Guam Daily Post continue finu English.
I identify as a shutter.
Yeah, well, I guess nowadays that you should be so careful to use a third-person singular pronoun that you're always a lot safer using they, even when you're talking about an inanimate object, right? Yeah, we had somebody at the station here lose their billfold, and luckily they found them. We also hope local authorities will be diligent in following up leads and tracking down the thieves. Police can start at the scrapyard. These incidents will stop through the collective efforts of our community to be on alert and to say something when they see or hear something that's off. We have to collectively take a stand. Vigilance is a good start. Are you listening, Lee Weber? Vigilance is a good start. Yeah. Stay
sure
vigilant.
is.
Okay, so much for Zemi Kotny. Let's go now to the card. right, so this is what I got on the card. I've renamed the first item on the card Tina's Folly. It had been Amata Coleman Rademacher versus Tina, Dr. Peter Watson versus Krytarki, Grijalva, and Bavakwa, and Dr. Watson versus Grijalva and Bavakwa. But, you know, it just goes on and on and on. So now it's Tina's Folly. There you go, and it deals with her Resolution 56. Next, I've got Bavakwa versus the CNMI, which is kind of the same food in a different plate. And then I've got USA Today versus Reality, and of course, longtime listeners are going to say, hasn't that been on the card for the last couple years? During the time that USA Today owned the Daily News, Gannett owned the Daily News. And then I've got Chinese American Civil Rights Coalition versus Turley and Tall Tales. And finally, Cultural Marxism versus the United States Navy and the Department of Administration. Okay, so Tina's Folly. Now, I always have to start out and remind you of the old saying by Robert Lind that a lie you've heard 1,000 times is easier to believe than the fact that you just heard. And the fact that you've heard now every day, and I got to keep saying it, is, one, when Tina talks about the insular cases, Tina and everybody else over there, they're talking about Downs versus Bidwell. Downs versus Bidwell was a commercial case that said that the United States Constitution did not apply to Puerto Rico ex proprio vicare, that is, of its own force, and that the I got to take a look. I've lost the term there momentarily. Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes, imposts, and excises, etc. But all duties, imposts, and excises shall be uniform throughout the United States. So the uniformity clause didn't apply to Puerto Rico. Didn't apply to Puerto Rico, didn't apply to Guam, didn't apply to the Philippines. Meaning that when bananas were imported from Puerto Rico to New York, regular customs duties did not apply. The customs duties applied by the Organic Act of Puerto Rico, called the Foraker Act, did apply. But the really important things to remember about Downs, it's a commercial case. It dealt with customs duties. And because of Downs, we can have our mirror image tax system where instead of sending our income tax to the U.S. Treasury in Washington, D.C., we collect the tax and we keep it right here. And we collect Section 30 money and we keep it right here. And we collect passport fees and any other kind of excise or fee the United States government charges, including even immigration fees. They all stay here, including passport fees. We get them all.
And we want to give them up for insular cases?
We want to give them up because of what some Navy captain said in 1904. Yeah. We want to give all that up because Tina and some of the folks over at the legislature got their skivvies all bunched up because they didn't like a couple of words that that one of the justices used in his opinion. Yeah, it's fair. It's equity, right?
Sounds fair.
Yeah,
sounds about right.
So we give up all of that stuff. That's what Downs is about. It's about customs duty, importing bananas, taxes, all of the bennies that apply here, the ones I mentioned, the GITA qualifying certificate, the fact that the U.S. tariffs don't apply in Guam, so Guam is a free port. Now, there is a hypothetical piece of obiter dictum that talks in terms of what the United States may want to do, which is expand its empire. So you read page 187 in Downs versus Bidwell, And you'll walk away from there saying, this is an imperialist case. I would agree. It is an imperialist case. In 1898, when Teddy Roosevelt worked things out so that we used the sinking of the battleship Maine in Havana Harbor as an excuse to conquer the Philippines, we decided it was time we get ours just like everybody else had theirs. And we went out and got ourselves. We could have had 4, but we gave up Cuba before the war, without even running the flag up there. So we took over three colonies. So it's what Ann Hattori went on the show John Oliver's last week tonight and said, the American flag flies here, so you would think American law applies. And she was trying to quote Downs, but she didn't even get the quote right. And she said because of that quote, the American Constitution doesn't have to apply. So she went national with this myth, and apparently everybody else has picked it up. And now if you want to be woke for Guam purposes, here is the litany, like, from church, where you have the leader and then the congregation responds. When I give you the signal, Jose, you say it's racist, okay? Are you ready?
Let's go.
Yeah. Insular cases.
It's racist.
Yeah. Downs versus Bidwell.
It's racist.
Yeah. The incorporation of territories doctrine.
It's racist.
Justice Brown.
He's racist.
There you go. That's it. Anytime any of these things come up, you never go to the merits of the discussion. You can't get past, I'm against racist. I'm a good person. I condemn racist every time, and I don't care. I want Downs versus Bidwell overruled because...
It's racist.
Yeah, this passes for a thought process over at the legislature. Beginning at 1600 today, they were supposed to vote, so they're probably voting on it right now as I speak. But this was Tina's folly. Now, Tina almost finally wised up. It was too late. But I have a story that ran in the Daily News about a letter that Tina wrote to Gregorio Kilili Sablan, who was the chairman, the vice chairman of the committee, the subcommittee on insular affairs that heard Resolution 279, which is Congressman Grijalva's resolution telling the Supreme Court overrule the insular cases because
it's racist.
Yeah. And here's what she said. Wrote to Kilili Sablan requesting that Congress pass legislation to provide equity for Guam and the territories in supplemental security income and other programs. She could have done that. In addition to everything else she screwed up, she clouded her message. She had the golden opportunity to go before that committee and say, insular cases or no insular cases, if we were living in the 50 states, supplemental security income would come to our eligible residents. There would be no cap on our Medicaid, et cetera. She could have said that, and she could have said, Congressman, please help us with this. She could have said that, but she had to go into racism and all the rest of this stuff. So, as a matter of advocacy, a good tactic is what's called bottom line up front. Figure out what it is that you really want and lead with that. Now, people tend to want to lay things out in chronological order, not usually the best way, and they want to kind of build up the things and lay a foundation. So she laid her foundation with this silly insular cases argument. And, there were a lot of people there who were nodding their heads, the people who didn't know what was coming off. But the guy that, Peter Watson, who submitted testimony, knew exactly what was going on. And he said, no, that would be a mistake. But if someone is testifying at that hearing with well thought out, logical, credible testimony saying that is a mistake. And somebody else continues to say,
that's racist.
You know, it's a classic case of shiny objects. It's a whole lot easier to memorize 2 words, even if one of them is a contraction, right? It's short for that is racist. It's apparently a whole lot more fun than engaging any kind of a logical examination of what it is that you're trying to do. But that's Tina's letter.
I almost forgot what we were talking about because all I thought was it was racist.
It was racist, yeah. And earlier than the last sentence here, earlier this month, the Vice Speaker appeared before Congress during a hearing on House Resolution 279 and requested fairness in federal programs, along with a binding political status plebiscite for Guam. No, she didn't. She didn't ask for that. What happened was that they finally got around to amending resolution, where in the hell is it here? I tell you, I hate this when you touch the wrong thing on an iPad and you go south on it quick. Just give me a second here and I'll tell you how that resolution got amended. Yeah, so they amended it, and they added this to the end, or in the resolutions clauses. I don't have the right one yet, I guess.
This is the one they did on Wednesday morning?
Yeah. I've been meaning to print it out. Yeah, I finally got it. Finally found it again. iPad. All right, this is what they added into their silly resolution. The SSI program was designed to replace prior federal state systems of public assistance, such as old age assistance and aid to the blind, etc., through the original Social Security Act, as well as to aid permanently and totally disabled. Whereas these programs are subject to federal matching funds from the states, resulting in various payment levels and eligibility requirements, etc., burdensome provisions. Despite U.S. Congress recognizing these inadequacies, which led to the creation of SSI, these adult assistance programs remain in Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands. So the old programs are still available. Yeah. They were replaced in the U.S. by SSI. Unlike prior federal state programs, the SSI program provided a uniform federal income floor with minimal barriers to eligibility. The SSI benefits amounts to a monthly maximum of $794 for an individual and $1,156 for couples, helping to provide more financial stability, etc. Despite the presence of qualifying U.S. citizens residing in the unincorporated territories are excluded from SSI coverage, resulting in the continuation of federal territory matching based on old federal state program models, etc. And then in the resolve clauses, she asks, pay that stuff, right? Yeah, let's take a short break here.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76circlekguam.com.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Now, the third resolve clause reads like this. This is what they want the committee, what they want the Congress to do. Acknowledge that the insular cases are relics of the racial views of an earlier era that have no place in our nation today. 4, reject the insular cases and their application to all present and future cases, controversies involving the application of the Constitution in the United States territories. That is the horribles. That's the awfuls. And, you know, when they vote today, I'm going to make a list of everybody who voted in favor of this resolution, and I'll be reminding you repeatedly as to what it was that they want to happen to you. They want you to pay federal income tax and all of the other horribles that would arise from repealing Downs. Now, if Downs were repealed, what would happen? This is what, and again, I think there's some misunderstanding of basic civics. If a case got to the Supreme Court where the application of Downs were at issue, the Supreme Court just can't say, well, we got this note from Grijalva, now we think we ought to overrule. There has to be a case that comes before the Supreme Court that properly raises that issue. So they have to start out in the trial court. Now, my suspicion is that it's Neil Weir's birthright citizenship case from Samoa that might make it, or the case from Puerto Rico. It's a complicated name that I can't remember, where the Social Security Administration tried to recover SSI from someone who moved from New York back to Puerto Rico. Now, it could very well be that gentleman, whose name I can't remember, might say, you can't collect that back from me because you're treating Puerto Rico differently from New York, violates the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution. That would be, and the Supreme Court says, yeah, we want to hear that petition for writ of certiorari from New York, from the U.S. government. That would be a way, probably the only way that matter could get before the Supreme Court of the United States. The likelihood of that happening, I think, is somewhere down between slim and none. But of course, Neil Weir would like to have this happen because he wants to stick the folks in American Samoa with American citizenship, whether they like it or not, all in the name of decolonization. And we heard Amata Radewagen, Coleman Radewagen yesterday speak quite eloquently as to why they're more than happy with the situation they are now. Nationals able to follow their own legal and cultural norms, something that people on Guam, the separatists, whine about every day. You think that maybe what they should be asking for is, can you treat us like Puerto Rico if we burn our passports? But, there's no room for logic in this discussion as long as you can say...
It's racist.
Yeah. So this resolution is Tina's folly. It's poorly thought out. It's poorly drafted. It makes enemies where it's not necessary to make it. Tina goes in and reconstructs. Tina's a historical revisionist, slams the Navy unnecessarily. But of course, that if you're a separatist, that's the game. You want to slam the Navy, the Marine Corps, the military, the U.S. government every time you get a chance. If for some reason if there was a small tear in the flag that flew over the United States Post Office, the separatists would make a, quote, federal case out of it. They're discriminating against us because they can't fly a flag that doesn't have a tear in it over the post office just because it's on Guam and just because Chamorros go to that post office, right? That's kind of the dialogue that we're caught up in here. So Tina could have done the right thing. She could have used this opportunity and gone to the Congress and said something like this, Congressman, we don't pay U.S. taxes on Guam. In fact, we get a multiplier on U.S. taxes because we get something called Section 30 money, which means we collect income taxes from military types that are stationed on the island. And the U.S. customs duties don't apply here. We know that. And we do get almost all the federal programs. But could you give us just a couple more, please, sir? Instead of overrule the insular cases because...
It's racist.
Yeah. So that's Tina's folly. I got somebody in the green room here. Probably Tina. No, it's not. It's our Carl. Carl, it's probably a good thing you stayed away from the legislative hall today. If you hadn't,
sounds like you were greatly anticipating Tina. I can do my best imitation of Tina if you want.
Well, if you had gone to the hall today, more than likely one or two of the members would have stood up and asked the sergeant at arms to remove you from the peanut gallery as tending to have an intimidating effect on the members, saying something along the line, how can you expect us to do legislative business when we've got the most dangerous man in the room looking at us every moment?
Okay, Bob, if you say so. Yeah, I've got a question. I was listening in on your conversation yesterday with, what's her name? Ms. Radewagen?
Yeah.
What's her official title? What is she?
She is a delegate from American Samoa. She is to American Samoa what Michael San Nicolas is to Guam.
Oh, okay. It was a very interesting discussion, and I really appreciated how thoughtful she was, and she stated her case very well. I have a question. One of the things, maybe the thing I value most in our relationship with the United States is our connection with the U.S. Constitution, our personal freedoms, the Bill of Rights. And some people say that, well, we can always just write it into our founding documents. It's no big deal. But it is a huge deal because, many countries, socialist countries like Russia, China, and others, they have so-called rights written into their documents. But as David Horowitz pointed out, the former Marxist, he said that these are actually worthless. They're what they call paper rights. They're only whatever the one-party leadership, the Communist Party, happens to say it is. If they say you've got freedom of speech, yeah, you have freedom of speech as long as you don't criticize the Communist Party. So I'm wondering what their connection is, the American Samoan residents, is to what's their connection to the Constitution? Do they have the same protections of speech and the press and peaceful assembly, etc., or is it somewhat different?
They have their own Samoan constitution, and I suspect it contains all of those guarantees. As far as the Constitution, Downs says that the people in the conquered islands were entitled to the fundamental rights incorporated into the Constitution. And that's probably life, liberty, property, due process, etc., something along those lines. But the Constitution does not apply, obviously, to Samoa ex proprio vigere, like it doesn't apply here.
That's interesting. Yeah, one of my concerns if we separated from America is that we separate from our protections under the Constitution of those basic freedoms, and we would be at the mercy of whatever government develops out of that. And you know the history of what's happened in some countries that have separated from their the countries that
from their mother countries. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not some; it's probably most, Carl.
Yeah, and the governments that came into power were too many times they were, they didn't care about any rights for the average citizen. They just cared about.
The norm was either a tin horn dictator or a Marxist regime. One of the two. Very. I probably ought to do a little research, but I don't recall off the top of my head that any of all of the countries that were decolonized in the Great Rush in the 1960s embraced a popular democracy or a republic like ours. Back to the Constitution for a minute, Carl. Our Organic Act, as enacted in 1950, had all of the provisions of the Bill of Rights included into the Guam Organic Act. So even though the Constitution didn't apply, as a practical matter, the Bill of Rights did, because there's a rule, a judicial rule called Rule of Presumptive Adoption. And that is, as an example, I use Guam and California. Guam adopted huge chunks of California law in 1933, some of which is still on the books. So if you wanted to know what the interpretation of those those things coming from California was, you look to California case law, because the rule of presumptive adoption says that when a jurisdiction passed the law, it presumably adopted the court's construction from that jurisdiction. So, our right of free speech in the Organic Act, adopts all of the Supreme Court jurisprudence on free speech. But just to make sure, in 1996. No, 1970s. Whoa, got my dates mixed up here. 1966, the Mink Amendments passed, and what the Mink Amendment said, that the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution, with an exception or two, apply to the extent that they didn't apply, now apply in Guam the same as they would in the States. So although the Constitution didn't follow the flag, certainly the Bill of Rights got here on their own power, or on Congress's power. And people want to forget that too when they start talking about the insular cases.
Yeah, I'm very much concerned about that. That's one of the reasons I'm so vigorously against separation, because I see the danger in a government developing out of that situation that is not friendly to those personal freedoms. And I saw an example one time of that I think illustrates how important those freedoms are. I saw an article in which someone stated that in Cuba, communist Cuba, the literacy rate is 99%. And first of all, I'm kind of skeptical about that, because there's so much, how would you say, government exaggeration because of the type of government it is. But even if that was true, suppose it was really 99% literacy, what would be the point when the government can come in and throw you in jail or torture you for reading the wrong thing, reading the Bible, reading 1984 by George Orwell, or tens of thousands of other books that the government deems wrong. Wrong thing. We don't want you reading that. That's bad for you. We know the best for you.
Well,
so anyway,
take the separatist rap at face value, and I think it would be very hard to convince anyone that the American regime here in Guam hasn't done the following things. One, it has provided that framework for individual rights and freedom, and has provided a impartial working judiciary to the extent that a little island like Guam can take its grievance all the way to the United States Supreme Court against the United States, the most powerful government in the world, and win. That doesn't happen in Cuba, that's for sure. It doesn't happen in very many places. So we're governed by the rule of law. We have the U.S. Constitution to protect us, and we do have unbelievable amounts of freedom from almost the rest of the world.
Yeah. And one thing I appreciate also is the matter of sovereignty. Some people bring up, well, we're not sovereign. We need to be sovereign, so we can have a flag at United Nations. We can go and, arrive in a limousine and go to our hotel suite and be among the, other world leaders. But I'm much more concerned about personal sovereignty. And the problem is there are many countries around the world, Russia, China, Cuba, Zimbabwe, the list goes on and on.
Canada.
They're sovereign countries, but, their personal sovereignty, the personal freedoms are destroyed. They're damaged. And to me, personal sovereignty, my freedom to live my life as I choose without some elite group deciding that, I shouldn't say that, I shouldn't read that, I shouldn't think that.
Carl, I suspect that given your reputation for danger, you couldn't get past immigration in about 80% of the countries in the world.
You're probably right, Bob.
Good talking to you,
thanks for
Carl.
letting me chime in. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Busy week? Mezcla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. A true taste of Guam.
At GTA, we understand the importance of cybersecurity for your business's digital property. Our multi-threat security bundle provides managed security with professional services aimed to detect and stop malware and internet threats. Let our business solutions experts help your company build resilience with our cost-effective solutions. Safeguard your business today. Call 671-644-1000 or visit gta.net/business. GTA, we start with you.
Okay, so here we are, back on Tall Tales for almost the end of the first half here. And next item on the card is kind of more of the same thing, a little separatist if you haven't had enough already. This is Bavakwa versus the CNMI and some other pearls of wisdom from Michael Bavakwa, who started out in the Post and then drifted to the Daily News as a columnist. The title of his column that I'm going to start with is Bavakwa. We must aim for more than being a U.S. territory. And I'm going to start not talking about us, but about the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Now, if you remember your history, when the Treaty of Paris was signed in 1898, the United States says, we want Guam. And I suspect the Spanish delegate said, yeah, there's a lot of other islands around Guam there, too. There's the Northern Marianas and the Marshalls and the Carolina. Do you want? No, we don't want it. We just want Guam. We just want a place where we can use as a coaling station. The rest would be too much of a burden for us. We don't need it. So they said, okay. And the Spanish didn't want them either, didn't want the other islands either, so they sold them to the Germans, who started building their colonial empire around the turn of the last century, about the same time we started ours. There was German Southwest Africa, which became Namibia. There was German, I think it was German East Africa, which became Tanganyika. Part of New Guinea was German. The United States, Germany, and England kind of jousted over Samoa, and we kind of euchred Germany out of it and cut a deal with the Brits and divided Samoa. And as Amata told us yesterday, in 1900, the Samoan chiefs asked the United States, would you please annex us? Yeah. And then, so the Germans took over what are now the Northern Marianas. Well, that lasted until 1914, and then the Japanese, who had gotten into the colonialization business in 1895 when they colonized Korea and Taiwan and Okinawa in the 1870s, Japan immediately declared war on Germany and came in and took over all of the Mariana Islands. In fact, all of Micronesia. So that's how the Germans and Japanese got to the Northern Marianas. When World War II was over, we went through another fit of decolonization like we did after World War I, where the League of Nations established mandates for various countries. They gave the French a mandate for Lebanon, and they gave the Brits a mandate for what later on turned out to be Iraq, and so on down the list. So all of Micronesia, except for Guam, was put into a strategic trust, and the United States was appointed the administrator of the trust. And the United States created a quasi-sovereignty called the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands. A lot of you guys out there remember the old TTPI. You don't remember it, Jose. Well, the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands was everything in what we call Micronesia today, except for Guam. In the beginning, the headquarters or the capital of the Trust Territory was in Honolulu. And somebody had the bright idea, we should move it closer to the people we're supposed to be governing. So they moved it to Guam. And they set up the Trust Territory headquarters a little bit east of where Cars Plus is right now. It was a wood and screen building, the Trust Territory headquarters. And then after John F. Kennedy kicked the CIA and the Naval Technical Training Unit out of Saipan in 1962, the Trust Territory headquarters moved to Capitol Hill on Saipan, and that became the capital of the Northern Marianas. I mean, the capital of the Trust Territory. The top dog in the Trust Territory was a guy named the High Commissioner, who had a nice house on Capitol Hill. And, it was colonialism, except that there was no intent, even a tacit intent, to hang on to those islands forever. The idea was to turn them all loose. The United States, as the administrator, had the job of doing that, subject to a little supervision from the UN. And in the beginning, the United States idea was all of you islands, Northern Marianas, Marshalls, and Carolines, will constitute one nation. And we will, we'll negotiate with you toward that end. And that didn't sit very well, especially with people in Saipan, because they said, no, we don't want to set up our own independent country. I'll come back to Saipan right after the big halftime show here.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Up all night in the Senate. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Senators debating a science and technology bill that would pour billions into research to better compete with China. There is support for the bill from both sides of the aisle. Once that cleared, the Senate may vote on the bill to create a commission to study what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. Senate Majority Leader Schumer.
A national, bipartisan, independent commission to report on the events of January 6th is exactly what the doctor ordered.
But Senate Republican Leader McConnell says with multiple investigations already underway, another isn't needed.
I do not believe the additional extraneous commission that Democratic leaders want would uncover crucial new facts or promote healing.
10 Republicans would have to support the bill for it to pass the Senate. It's considered unlikely. President Biden today will unveil his budget proposal for the next fiscal year, estimated at $6 trillion. It would represent the biggest hike in federal spending since World War II. In Cleveland yesterday, the president said boosting the economy is vital.
We must be number one in the world to lead the world in the 21st century. It's a simple proposition.
The Attorney General in Washington State has charged 3 Tacoma police officers in the death of a black man who told police he couldn't breathe as they restrained him during an arrest in March of 2020, more than 2 months before the death of George Floyd.
The officers had said at the onset that Manny Ellis aggressively resisted arrest. There was a claim that he had picked one of the officers up by his bulletproof vest and slammed him to the ground. And it seems like the Attorney General's office does not believe that.
Reporter Brandy Cruz of Fox Q13 in Seattle. 2 of the officers face second-degree murder charges. A third is accused of manslaughter. All 3 will be arraigned in court later today. America is listening to Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Federal prosecutors launching another election meddling investigation.
Federal prosecutors reported to be looking into whether or not Ukraine may have illegally meddled in the 2020 election. The investigation is focused on Rudy Giuliani's ties to current and former Ukrainian officials and if they used Giuliani to spread misinformation. The New York Times says those efforts were part of a scheme to try and tilt the election in favor of Donald Trump. The Times reports the investigators are focusing on Giuliani's travel, including a 2019 trip he took to meet with Ukrainian officials, including a member of its parliament. Lawyers for Giuliani say those meetings were necessary to investigate what they believe to be corruption on the part of the Biden family. Sean Blanchell, Fox News.
2 new bills will be introduced in Congress later today about the coronavirus pandemic. The first would create a commission to study the country's response. The second would remove China's sovereign immunity, meaning Americans could sue the Chinese government for losses from the virus. San Jose, California residents turned out for a vigil last night to remember the 9 people killed Wednesday in an attack on a commuter rail facility. Earlier, fellow employees remembered their co-workers lost.
The VTA board chairman, Glenn Hendricks, named each employee who was killed and said what they did for the Valley Transportation Authority.
We want all of our employees to know we are all grieving together, and we want to do everything we possibly can to support each other. If today or in the coming days you need to stop, talk with a coworker, take some quiet time, do it.
One worker said many of the employees worked at VTA for 20 or 30 years, and over that kind of time, they become a family. The incoming CEO of VTA said they will have grief counselors available now and in the coming days. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
Busy week? Mescla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
So here we are back again on Tall Tales, talking about the trust territory of the Pacific Islands and the Northern Marianas. The Northern Marianas were one of the 6 districts in the trust territory of the Pacific Islands. During the time of American trusteeship over all of the islands in Micronesia except for Guam, the United States created a body called the Congress of Micronesia. Which was popularly elected by all of the folks living in the 3 island groups. And the Congress of Micronesia got involved with the negotiations with the United States and allowed the Marianas District to negotiate for itself because the Marianas did not want to become independent countries. They wanted to become a territory of the United States. So I've told you a million times on the air that free association is not an option for the United States, for Guam, because Guam is already, as Downs versus Bidwell says, of the United States, but not integrity of the United States. The United States can't, in a sense, can't negotiate with itself. There'd have to be some element of sovereignty for the United States to enter into an agreement with a political entity. In that respect, Guam is not a political entity with sovereignty, so the United States could not enter into a compact or free association with it. Can't negotiate with itself, so we can't do it. The only way that we could have free association would be for Guam to become independent and then negotiate a deal with the United States. So that means two options, independence and statehood. And if Tina gets her way, that will mean no options, because Guam will become an incorporated territory, which is like a fish trap. You can swim in, but you can't turn around and swim back out. Independence would be off the table. The only exit would be statehood, and I've spent too much time explaining why I don't think that, not as a political matter, but as a practical matter, could ever happen. So the United States entered into negotiations, I think it was a guy named Hayden Williams, with the Saipan folks, and they cut a deal called the Compact of Free Association. And they did a really good job, kind of relying on one of my favorite sayings, and that is, in life, you don't get what you deserve, you get what you negotiate. So they negotiated SSI, unlike the other territories. They negotiated control of their own immigration. They negotiated control of their own labor laws. Immigration and labor, they blew and lost control of it. And they negotiated something that would be unconstitutional if the Constitution applied ex proprio vigere in Saipan, and that is that only citizens of Northern Marianas descent can own fee title to real property in the Northern Marianas. And they also negotiated a bicameral house, the upper house of which is grossly malapportioned because Rhoda has as many senators as Saipan. Each has 3. Saipan 3, Rhoda 3, Tinian 3. Saipan and the Northern Islands 3.
And I think Saipan's 4 times the size, maybe 5 times the population.
Probably 10 times.
10 times.
Yeah. Yeah, and that would never go under Baker versus Carr or Reynolds versus Sims, U.S. Supreme Court cases, 1 man, 1 vote. So the Northern Marianas got a hell of a good deal out of it, and they could have been independent. All they would have had to do was say, yeah, we want to negotiate the same way as Palau, and the marshals are, give us some money, we'll allow you to have certain defense prerogatives, etc., and away they would have gone. Now, that lays the foundation for what Bavakwa says here. And here's what he says, and I titled this on the card, Bavakwa versus CNMI. Bavakwa, we must aim for more than being a U.S. territory, like these idiots to the north who could have done something else, but they wanted to be a territory. Na, 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 CNMI. He goes on to say, every territory of the U.S. today is different in some ways, but similar in others. All are islands, except in different oceans. All have non-voting delegates. All are citizens, except for American Samoa, where the people are nationals. Those from American Samoa and those with ties to American Samoa, but living in the U.S., can sometimes be very different in their political outlook. In recent years, a lot of this difference has come down to U.S. citizenship. While the Samoan diaspora laments how being U.S. nationals has limited their opportunities, those in American Samoa worry that citizenship might mean more federal interference and loss of rights at home. It's the easiest thing in a territory to imagine that improving our fortunes must always lie with being further included in the U.S. In Guam, we might see our struggle over political rights as a slow sockman to eventual inclusion. And then he goes into talking about F.B. Leon Guerrero, etc. And then he winds up by saying, for those like F.B. Leon Guerrero who often spoke to the U.S. and of it more like a king than you dare not anger, Chamorros had plenty of experience with this type of government. They saw it under the Spanish and also under the Navy prior to World War II. Later, Kiko Squilo changed his tune somewhat after seeing how difficult things remained in terms of being U.S. citizens who lived in what was still a possession of the U.S. No. If you want to be technical, Guam was a possession from 1898 to 1950 till the Organic Act was adopted. It then became a territory, not a possession. Congress is really sloppy with how it uses those terms, but George Orwell and I always criticize that kind of conduct. He quotes Suilo saying, "Our contribution was as much as we could do. We couldn't go any farther, but you have everything before you, and there's nothing to fear like the old days when even angels fear to tread." I have no regrets. He says, in their time, their imagination had been limited to thinking the best we could hope for was to be a territory of the U.S. But in the 60s, seeing the world decolonizing seemed more of the possibilities existed for even the smallest nations. FBLG was encouraging future generations to push for more around our political status to decolonize. No.
Is there any citation to anything?
No, that's what Bavacqua hopes, wants us to think, right? So, he's really dumping on the CNMI here because the CNMI at the end of the trust territory could have opted for independence. They could have had the same deal as Palau and the Federated States, but they didn't. They wanted to be territories of the United States. That must tell you something about how smart those folks up there are. The fact that they got a really good deal and the fact that we could have as good a deal if we pursued it. You heard Amata say yesterday that in Samoa, the government of America and Samoa controls immigration. They decide who can come into Samoa and who can't. This is all because of Downs versus Bidwell, which Tina wants to throw on the junk heap. Okay, I've got a couple more Bavacquas here, but let me check and find. I suppose it's time for another Joe, huh? Yeah, sure enough. I'm becoming prescient, Good afternoon, another Joe.
Yes, Bob. So I wanted to ask regarding. Oh, we got to get feedback here.
We got more than one another Joe on the phone. We got another Joe.
Sorry about that. So the question is the trust territory. Let me solve this real quick. So they're under the Department of Interior, the former trust territory.
No, they weren't. They were not under the Department of Interior. They were under the trust territory of the Pacific Islands.
I mean, well, they were, right?
I beg your pardon?
Now there's no longer a trust territory, right?
No, the trust territory split up three ways: the Republic of the Marshall Islands, Palau, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas.
Well, Nauru, right? Also.
I beg your pardon?
Nauru?
No, Nauru was a British colony, which they let the Aussies manage for them until they dug all the phosphate out of Nauru. I've still got more than another Joe on the line here, another Joe.
I'm doing my best to solve that. Okay, so regarding the so that means that now they're under the Department of Interior.
They're not under the Department of. They're independent countries. Another Joe.
Oh, I'm sorry. Apologies. It's just that I seem to recall seeing different court systems established, and I'm wondering if that was inclusive of these new sovereign countries, so to speak.
Yeah, there is an independent judiciary in the Federated States of Micronesia, And when those court systems were stood up, it was very easy for anyone who was a member of the Bar of Guam to get admitted. So I'm admitted to practice in the Federated States, not in Palau, not in Marshall. I just didn't have enough time to fill out the papers, or I could have been admitted there. But yeah, they have their own judiciary, their own judges, their own Supreme Courts, the whole thing. They're sovereign nations.
Also, they're not in any way connected to the U.S. Judiciary.
No.
Well, yeah. It's interesting the way it's all kind of evolving. According to their preference. Theoretically, they could renegotiate any of these COFA countries and become U.S. nationals, unincorporated territories and U.S. nationals, similar to similar to Samoa. Isn't that possible?
I suppose in theory, because as far as American Samoa was concerned, after the United States, Germany, and England got done arguing about them and decided that American Samoa would come under the American sphere of influence, the chiefs of Samoa sent a note to the United States saying, please annex us. And it took the United States till like 1931 before Congress actually passed a statute annexing American Samoa. So I suppose it's theoretically possible. Practically speaking, I don't think it would ever happen, another Joe.
It doesn't make sense to me, Uncle Bob. I mean, you and I know the American system is really good compared to all the others. And so why these COFA countries are confused as to whether or not they want to become U.S. citizens in U.S. territories.
Well, I don't know that was offered to them during those negotiations.
Then they've been done an injustice, Uncle Bob, and everyone.
Let's leave the word justice out of this, okay? That's not a prohibited word on Tall Tales, but it's so few people other than myself know how to use it. I don't like to hear it as the basis of an argument. So go ahead, another Joe.
Yeah, I'm hoping that they're given options. If they're not comfortable yet becoming U.S. citizens, then perhaps become U.S. nationals and get a representative to Congress, and they can represent their people and get resources for their people. They are not looking after their people.
Well, they get huge grants from the U.S. Treasury, and they're renegotiating those grants in 2024. So the United States gives them a large amounts of money, primarily to neutralize them. It's not the United States wants them so badly; it's they don't want anybody else to have them. Meaning nobody else, meaning China. And they do have a treaty with the United States. These so-called covenants of free association are actually treaties. So they get things like the United States postal system applies in those three countries, which if you live in Chuk is one heck of a benefit.
It's terrible, Uncle Bob. I mean, you have these cases where their citizens are there's human trafficking. That case here in Guam, I don't know where else.
There was a case from the Marshal, but another Joe, this is what all of the separatists are talking about. They're saying that to be a free and independent sovereign nation, small island in the Western Pacific is the ideal, like these three countries to the south of us. So it's not an injustice. It's not unfair. It's what they wanted. It's called self-determination. It's what the columnist that I keep quoting here, Michael Bavacqua, wants. He wants Guam to be a free, independent nation like they are. And whatever deal the United States would feel like negotiating with that free, independent nation is just a matter of speculation.
One last point, Uncle Bob, is the former Senator, Doris Flores Brooks, has come out saying she wants the CNMI and Guam to be united, and that it's now time to take a serious look. I'm thinking to myself, what have we been doing so far? What have our elders been doing so far? They they were not paying attention. They were oblivious. They were ignorant.
Well, you younger fellas wouldn't remember this, but there was a time when we had a statute, and they had a statute, and we each island or each territory took a vote as to whether or not we would want to unite. And the Northern Marianas said yes, and we said no, and it was a resounding vote. And I've explained some of the reasoning behind that, but for your benefit, I'll do it again. One of the reasons was some residual bad feelings from World War II. This was back in the 60s that these votes were held. And during the Japanese regime in Saipan, the folks up there were Japanized, if there is such a word. You know, the Japanese took the opportunity to turn them into, you know, Japanese-type folks. The schools were taught in Japanese. They used the metric system of measurement, etc. Saipan and Tinian were huge sugarcane plantations. People had jobs. Garapan was a city of about 20,000 people. Yeah. And they really fell into the whole Japanese idea. When Japan invaded Guam from the north, they brought a fair number of Chamorros with them because very few Japanese learned Chamorro. They didn't have an enlightened school system like ours where they made Chamorro mandatory. So they brought Chamorro interpreters with them, and some of the Chamorro interpreters were pretty brutal. And I just ran across some historical material talking about some of those guys were really bad actors. So if there are some bad actors, the human tendency to say they're all bad actors. So there were a lot of bad feelings about the way the Saipan Chamorros treated their brothers and sisters here on Guam. As a matter of fact, that's where the word Guamanian came from. The history is that after World War II, people on Guam did not want to be called Chamorros because they didn't want to be identified as those bad folks from the Northern Marianas. So they took a poll, and the Guamanian was one of the choices, and that's the one that won. And Guamanian meant Chamorro up until right around the late 60s, maybe early 70s. So that was one reason. The second reason was Guam was economically so much ahead of Saipan. Saipan in the 1960s, you could lay down in the middle of Beach Road in the middle of the night and you'd be perfectly safe in the morning. There were very few cars on Saipan in those days. Not much of an economy. Tourism was a stand-up comedian's joke back in those days. If you really wanted to get a laugh out of a crowd, either here or there, you say, I know how we can really make Guam's economy prosperous. We'll have tourism. Nobody's going to want to come all the way to Guam. We can't do that. Anyhow, so that was the second reason that it didn't pass. And now I'm going to turn to where we are now. Another Joe, it can't pass. Because in order for Saipan, for the Northern Marianas to unite with us, you know, it's like a rabbit crawling into the sack with a grizzly bear. We're just too big and too powerful, and whatever self-government they have in Saipan, whatever representative, it would be gone. And once people get a taste of that, they're not that willing to let it go. Not to mention the fact that we have traveled different paths for so long. My sense is that people in Saipan, Chamorro or whatever, don't have the same outlook on the world, on life, etc., as the people from Guam do. It would not be a very happy marriage. I could see if it happened, where are we going to put the capital? Well, right here in Guam, of course. We've got the governors up. Yeah, you guys want to have it in Guam? No, it's got to be in Saipan. Well, we'll compromise and put it on Goat Island. So it's not going to happen, another Joe.
Okay, thanks for your time, Dr. Bob. I'll just keep listening. Thanks.
All right. So he asked me what time it was, and I told him how to build a complicated grandfather would. All right. Moving on with another Bavacqua column here. Bavacqua, racist depictions of Chamorros help to justify U.S. controls. Let's go to Wrigley Field for the seventh inning stretch.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified. Serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
Okay, so here we are again, back on Tall Tales for the last 2 innings of this week. And this time I've got Bavacqua, racist depictions of Chamorros help to justify U.S. control. So I wonder if, when I go like this, Jose, if Bavacqua picks up the vibe. When I point to you and you say...
It's racist.
I wonder if he picks up that vibe wherever he might be. Because Bavacqua practices what's called critical theory or critical race theory. And the way you practice critical race theory is you divide people up into 2 classes, oppressors and oppressed. And having done that, then you must show how the oppressors have oppressed the oppressed, and then you make a claim that the oppressed are entitled to something more than they would get in the ordinary course of events. You lay the foundation for critical race theory by going back in history and finding some incident that demonstrates a principle that, if you were to use presentism, is wrong. Presentism means taking an event that happened a long time ago, laying it out, and then applying today's manners and morals to that incident and condemning that incident. Now, I'll give you a perfect example from my own life. When I was a young kid growing up in the mainland back in the 40s, every Friday night, what did a kid do? He went down to the Sprague Theater for the cowboy movie that night. And so often the cowboy movies were cowboys and Indians, right? And guess who won every single time?
The concession stand.
Yeah, it wasn't the Indians, you know. It was, all those movies were about, you know, the savage Indians and how they tried to stop the pioneers from moving west and tried to shoot arrows at their covered wagons and on and on and on and on. And you really developed a picture of what we now refer to as Native Americans as always being the villains in these movies. And, you know, as a young, impressionable kid, I suppose I internalized that. And that was not a good way, you know, for a young kid to learn about American history. But that was, over 70 years ago. And to apply today's thought process to what those movies were like 70 years ago is fuzzy thinking at the very best, because we've moved along, we've changed our attitudes, we've changed our ideas. We don't do things like that anymore. We don't celebrate it. We don't condone it. So, I've seen how that works. But it's not something that I would even touch with somebody else's 10-foot pole anymore. But if you're going to be a critical race theorist, you have to seize on those things, and you have to say the white man brutalized the Indian and the white man's propaganda, etc. Therefore, we must have special programs where we take away from people who are not Native Americans so we can give to something to people who are Native Americans. It's called equity. And we've got to have inclusion, which means that we have to make sure that there are people who are Native Americans in various positions of authority. Doesn't matter whether they can do the work or merit the position, they have to be in those positions of authority just because they're Native Americans. That's what inclusion and diversity, that's where they go. A classic example is a vice president of the United States. The vice president of the United States she's not an African American. She is a black person and an Indian person, an East Indian person, which at one time would have meant that she could never have been vice president of the United States. She would have never been vice president of the United States on the ticket, been on the ticket in 1915. Excuse me, as you were 1920 for sure. 2020 she was. And was she on the ticket in spite of the fact that she was black? No. She was on the ticket because she was black. When Joe Biden said, this is what I don't know who it's going to be, but my vice president will be a female and it will be a black person. That's equity. And that all goes back to this critical race theory. Is Kamala Harris qualified for the job?
Nope.
Let me check with Willie Brown. I think Willie is quite familiar with Kamala's qualifications. It didn't matter whether she was qualified or not. She actually showed during the primary debates that she was unqualified to even be a candidate. But because of critical race theory, she is where she is. So that takes us into Bavacqua's column. Racist depictions of Chamorros help to justify U.S. control. The U.S. House of Representatives is taking up a resolution condemning the racist rhetoric of the insular cases. Supporting resolutions have been introduced in different territories, including Guam. The insular cases were a series of U.S. court cases decided at the start of the 20th century, which, among other things, answered the question of whether the U.S. Constitution and citizenship follow and apply to places the U.S. acquires as territories. And the answer to that is actually sometimes. The answer was no, and part of the rationale at the time was that people who lived in territories such as Guam, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico were alien races who were inferior to white Americans. Just dead wrong, just dead wrong. I wonder if Bavacqua eats with the same mouth that he uses to talk about this stuff. Part of the legacy of these decisions is that Congress can pick and choose what parts of the Constitution and other laws apply to the territories. Furthermore, it also reinforces the principle that those living in the territories have no rights except that which Congress allows. If you aren't familiar with the insular cases, this is sadly one of the limits of our current educational system. We got to get into critical race theory. That's what he's saying here.
Again, I want to clarify something.
Uh-huh.
You live here on Guam.
Yeah.
Did you have to? You lost, I guess, in his narrative, lost rights as well. Right? Yes,
yeah.
because you live here on Guam.
Right.
Is that racist?
Of course.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trying to wrap my head around why living on Guam is racist. I mean, it is a racist act the way the government.
Well, it doesn't.
government.
See, it doesn't have to be racist today. That's it. Only had to have been racist 121 years ago. That's always the foundation for critical race theory, and that's why this 1619 thing that the Times ran is so important. Ordinarily, you can't get people interested in American history for love nor money, but that is the basis of critical race theory. So we have to pretend that that happened yesterday and that it so colored our system of government that it can never be fixed. That's critical race theory. I notice my phone is lighting up here a little bit, and I'm getting a little bit. I need a break, so I'm going to. Go to. I've got a couple of marks on the phone, right? Not that they're not that they're marks in the con man sense, not that they're easy marks. They're good marks, right?
Or they're not MARX either.
That's yeah. I've got two marks, but it's not the Marx Brothers. Okay, it's not the Marx Brothers because all the good funny lines come from me. How you doing, Mark?
Well, if we're the Marx Brothers, I'm Groucho.
Okay, Groucho.
All right. Well, Bob, I just wanted to go back, and I've never really fully understood it. I know in 1977 we had the Constitutional Convention, correct?
Correct.
The Guam Constitutional. And they came up with a constitution that was similar to what the CNMI had with the United States.
Well, the CNMI had a covenant with the United States which allowed them to adopt their own constitution. So the United States is not a party to their constitution.
Okay. So, and I'm going to automatically assume that you've read the Constitution from 1977 because you were here already. I know that.
I did, yeah.
Okay. Now, why was it voted down? I mean, what was the political climate then that caused it to fail?
The separatists.
The separatists.
The separatists,
okay.
yeah.
Now, is there any way to revive that document and get us to use it and have another plebiscite on that document, or is it a moot point? Is it dead?
I don't think it's dead. I think we could set up the necessary ratification process and go forward with it because Congress did approve it. But the separatist argument was, how can we have a constitution before we settle on our political status? Therefore, vote no.
Okay. All right. Well, if we can get that ball rolling, I'd be happy to help support that.
Good idea, Mark. You know, I had a bill in the 28th Guam legislature to, quote, patriate the Organic Act, which would mean that if Congress had passed the bill, the Organic Act would be our Constitution, which we could amend here by going through the necessary process. But see, the separatists didn't want that, and they didn't want the Constitution we did in 1977, because that weakens their argument that they are not self-governing.
Right.
So they were absolutely against it because it would hurt their argument.
Okay. I understand better now. Thank you very much for the history lesson, Bob. I'll let you get on to your show.
I'll go back to another Mark.
Okay. Take care. Bye.
Yeah, so we have an abundance of marks here today. You'd think we were out spending money in Germany. All right, good afternoon, Mark. Another Mark.
Hey, Bob. Sorry, but I don't have any brothers.
Oh, how about the guy who was just on the phone?
No. As far as my dad is concerned, I don't have any brothers, so I'm just a single Mark.
A single Mark.
To clarify your previous caller,
Okay.
Concerning American Samoa.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, they do have a choice to become U.S. citizens
They could.
after their 18th birthday.
Well, I had Amata on the show yesterday, and according to Amata, she is working on a bill that would, I use the word naturalize, make it easier for American Samoans to naturalize. And she said...
Yeah, but they're all fast-tracked.
Let me finish, Mark. And she said it wouldn't be a naturalization because naturalization only applies to foreigners. She said it would be more of a reclassification, and she said it would be a fast track. But she said it pins in Congress right now.
Yep, so that clarifies one. And then the other one, when you're talking about Bivakwa, you know, the choice was made a while ago, and you are pretty much aware of it. You are a very learned man. But it seems like even with this critical race theory crap, that because 2 or 3 people are pushing the topic, they're thinking that because there's 2 or 3 of them, that everybody thinks that way, which is totally wrong, but yet nobody wants to point it out.
Except for me.
Except for you.
Yeah.
So when someone turns around and starts messing with history, and saying this and that and all this and oppression and all that good garbage, you're sitting there going, okay, when you start eliminating the history and start inserting this critical race theory, which is just that, a theory, then you end up taking your history and flushing it down the toilet.
And that's, again, one of the aims of critical race theory. Tear down the statues, try to erase history as much as possible, because in order for it to work, people have to be convinced that what they have now is not good and what they had was no good. They've got to try something else.
Yeah, and you remember the old saying, if you don't look back at history, you have a tendency of repeating it.
Absolutely.
You know, and a third thing, that word that you were playing with in the last half hour.
Uh-huh.
Racist.
Yes.
You know, it's been played down, played sideways, played inside and out to where it actually means about as much to me as someone calling me a boy. It has no bite.
Yeah.
It has no, back in the day, when you call someone a racist, that's a derogatory remark.
It was.
But nowadays, it's not, because, I mean, the word has been used in so many different ways, so many wrong ways, because of the intent to try to sway people. If you're losing an argument, which is being done right now as we speak, you lose an argument, what's the fallback?
Yeah, you're a racist. Yeah.
So that covers generally everything under the sun. So in essence, the meaning of the word racist is so far-fetched, and so it has no bite to it, to where it's like just calling a guy a boy or calling a girl a girl. That's it. There's no bite to it. You know, calling a person a racist today is like saying hi.
Yeah, I made the point.
If you call someone a racist, you get slugged.
If you can't use the word racist in the first sentence of your first paragraph, nobody will know that you're serious, right?
Yeah. So right now they're going to have to go into the Democratic Webster Version Dictionary to come up with another word or redefine the word racist, because right now racist don't mean crap.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not where we should be. You know, I get along with everybody. I think I do. And if I don't get along with someone, it's not because of their skin color. It's because of their either attitude or disposition. Not because of their skin color. I mean, you can be whatever color you want. If you are still an idiot, antagonist, and arrogant, you're still an idiot, antagonist, or an arrogant, or arrogance, regardless of color. And plus, something always confuses me. What is a race? It's what is it? A cultural thing? Is it a historical thing? Is it a religious thing? Race is just an identification of where people come from.
Yeah, it is moldable in the hands of those who would attempt to influence you to do something that maybe is unwise, Mark.
Yeah, which to be honest with you, Bob, I'm going to say this, and I know someone's going to bite my head for it. We're all racist because there's no meaning to that word anymore.
Okay, Mark. Thanks.
All right, you take care. Have a good weekend.
You made your mark today. Thanks, Mark.
At GTA, we understand the importance of cybersecurity for your business's digital property. Our multi-threat security bundle provides managed security with professional services aimed to detect and stop malware and internet threats. Let our business solutions experts help your company build resilience with our cost-effective solutions. Safeguard your business today. Call 671-644-1000 or visit gta.net/business. GTA, we start with you. Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, for the home stretch of Tall Tales for the last episode this week. It's going to mean that Jose and I are going to be deprived for 3 whole days of Tall Tales. I know we can make it. We've done it before, but it's not going to be easy. So helping me wrap it up here, I've got Jesse, and straight from the drive-thru at McDonald's, a gentleman named Jack. I wonder if Jack ever goes to Jack in the Box doesn't have drive-through, does it?
I hear he has a discount there.
Okay. All right, let's go to Jesse first, and then if we have time before the end of the show, we'll go to drive-through Jack. Good afternoon, Jesse. Hello.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Bob. Just about you've been talking a lot about the statehood and independence thing.
Sure.
And it's a good lead up because with the COVID, I was hoping that probably it slowed it down, but that debate where maybe UOG can hold it between you, Bavakla, or you and others that are for statehood and or the status quo, and then the other side could be for the independents or the separatists, however you want to call them. But I just feel that the debate needs to keep going because in reality, as the more people learn about it, the more they're going to start questioning what is really just, or what do we really want as an island that's just hanging in this limbo of status quo. Because if you really look at it, we're all American citizens, and it's like we're half-assing it. We're not doing. It's like, okay, we want to be American citizens, but we don't want to do X, or we want to be independent, but we don't want to do X. And I just think you can't just go on life like that. You got to pick a side and see what, you know what I mean? Because, Americans in the States aren't half-assing it. They're being like full. They're doing what it is to be an American, you know, and they're part of the United States. And they, you know, they haven't. The Congress hasn't chosen to incorporate us into their union.
Is that what you want?
And I don't want that. I'm not in favor of that because I just don't think it's feasible. You know, as you said, there's for many reasons, but I just feel we should. I'm on the independent side because I feel we can have things like Israel has, the Memorandum of Understandings, or even the FSM, stuff like that, and we can still be connected to the U.S. You know, and as a ally, as they like to call it, we can be the ally, and the U.S. can provide us defense for being an ally to the United States. And also, there's already been thousands of people that have joined the military. We could, you know, there's been generals, there's been captains, there've been, you know, we can, as small as our army may be or whatever military we may have, you know, we could get air defense systems like Israel has, these missile defense systems, their Iron Dome or whatever they call it, you know. And the U.S. can give us money for having that here.
I'm going to jump in here for a second, Jesse. You know, an island that couldn't even close its dump is probably not going to have an Iron Dome like Israel has. So there's a political dimension here, and there's a practical dimension. And I'm caught up in the practical dimension. You know what my idea for the future is? I want Guam to continue to be part of the American empire and to try to improve our position within the American empire. Until somebody lays out for me what an independent Guam would look like, I'm not going to sign up for it.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, I understand that. But, you know, I just feel that we should, you know, we're either going to be a state or are we going to be part of the American empire or not? And if the U.S. doesn't want that, then we need to go to what we need to be sovereign. We need to and do what.
And if there were a sovereign Guam, what would it look like?
Who knows? What even now the U.S. don't know what they're going to look like in the next. You know, people are talking about the debt, the deficits, all these things.
When I say what it would look like, you know, we've known since 1783 exactly what the United States looks like because we have a constitution that laid out our plan for government. But I haven't heard a single separatist say that if the United States withdrew sovereignty over Guam, this is what we would do. This is what we would have. The only indication that I've got as to what a sovereign Guam would look like was that under the current regime, when the opportunity for voting came up, it was exclusionary. So I'm not so sure that this is going to meet with much popular approval for those who feel like they're going to be shut out of an independent Guam.
Right, but you know, at the end of the day, that's where this whole argument comes in again with the whole, you know, they never gave the people that were, and then you know, basically what they call people who have settled here, and I think that's what you're talking about is they're going to be left, they're going to feel like they're being left out of the vote for self-determination. You know. Yeah,
and if you leave us out of the vote, leave us out this time. Next time you'll kick us out. And
well, I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, what do we have to gauge? What do we have to gauge on? You know, when we talk about one of the fundamental things in what we ascribe to freedom and democracy, it's voting. And before there even is an independent Guam, the separatists say, you guys can't vote.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. The people that's this thing that the U.S. has got us caught up in. I don't know why we can't just be incorporated already. There's already U.S. citizens living here, you know. Well, I don't know why they haven't incorporated us into the union. It doesn't make any sense.
Well, if Guam were incorporated, then there'd be no independence. There'd be no
Well, that's fine.
There'd be Jesse, regardless of how right you consider your position, it doesn't give you the opportunity to see who can talk the loudest. So I've laid out what the pitfalls of incorporation are, and I would say that probably cooler heads would prevail rather than incorporate Guam right now, and we'd have all the disadvantages that the territory of Hawaii had, and none of the advantages that the state of Hawaii had. It's just not a good deal.
The biggest advantage of being a state is you're part of the union. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but
you're talking about incorporation, not statehood.
Well, you're going to eventually lead into statehood, because when you become incorporated, you have to. They're gonna head towards that direction. You know, they did it with Hawaii, they did it with Alaska. So, anyways, I just want to, I know this is your show, but thanks though. Happy Memorial Day weekend.
Same to you, Jesse. Thanks for calling.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
No vote on the January 6th commission. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The Senate has adjourned without taking a vote on the bill that would create a commission to study the January riot at the Capitol.
There'd been a lot of anticipation about a vote in the Senate early Friday about forming a 9/11-style commission to look into the Capitol Hill riot. That was supposed to happen after lawmakers took on a science and tech bill aimed at shoring up microchip production. But they adjourned just before 3 a.m. Eastern Time without taking on that bill or the commission measure. The commission proposal has been under fire from GOP leadership who say it's not needed because Congress is already investigating the riot. Democrats and some Republicans say officers who were hurt that day deserve a full investigation.
Fox's Jill Nato reports the Senate may try again later today. Fox News has learned exclusively 2 bipartisan bills dealing with the coronavirus will be introduced in Congress today. One would create a commission to examine the origins of the virus and America's response. Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy.
If the Chinese are playing around with viruses, turning them into deadly killers, especially with our money, we need to know.
The other bill would remove China's sovereign immunity, allowing COVID victims to sue the Chinese government for damages. President Biden in suburban Cleveland yesterday pitching his economic policies.
I believe this is our moment to rebuild an economy from the bottom up and the middle out. Not a trickle-down economy from the very wealthy. That has never benefited people who are at this college or any other place where they're trying to make a living.
The president will unveil his $6 trillion federal budget proposal for the next fiscal year later today. America is listening to Fox News.
Fox Nation presents podcasts Women of the Bible Speak.
I'm Shannon Bream, host of Fox News at Night and author of the new book, Women of the Bible Speak, the wisdom of 16 women and their lessons for today, where I examine the timeless stories of women in the Bible. Join me and some of my friends for this limited podcast series as we discuss what it means to be a woman of faith. Subscribe now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, FoxNewsPodcast.com, or wherever you download your podcasts.
Connect to Fox News Audio on the Fox News app. Listen to hear your favorite hosts like Brian Kilmeade, Jimmy Fallon, and Guy Benson standing up for what's right, live and via podcast. Just click listen, then swipe right and hear the latest news updates on your time. And scroll down to hear the latest podcasts from Fox News. And it's even easier to listen in the car with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Get programming alerts and notifications. Fox News Audio is on the Fox News app. The Voices America trusts. Download it now.
There are more signs the economy is rebounding from the coronavirus pandemic, and some of them are tasty.
Costco told investors it's reviving its food courts and food sampling starting next week. As mask restrictions ease, consumers are spending more on cosmetic items. Market research group IRI says lipstick sales surged 80% for the 4 weeks ending April 18th compared to a year ago. More Americans are returning to the roads and skies this Memorial Day weekend. JetBlue CEO David Nealman tells Fox News,
"Never have I been happier to see a line at a security checkpoint."
But drivers will pay an average of $3 a gallon for gas, the highest Memorial Day prices since 2014.
Fox's Carmen Roberts. Wall Street Thursday, the Dow gained 141 points. The S&P 500 was up nearly 5. Asian stock markets closing Friday mostly higher, and Dow futures are up about 150 points. The New York Times reports federal prosecutors have opened an investigation into possible meddling in the 2020 election by Ukraine and whether Ukrainian government officials used President Trump's then attorney, Rudy Giuliani, to spread misinformation about Biden family business dealings. In San Jose, California,